Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Braven Greenelsh on the line, and he's a founder and CEO of ThreeGood. Braven, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Adam. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I can't think of a more relevant topic. So lot of stress going on in the world, lots of different working environments, lots of things going on. So reducing employee burnout for leaders, I mean, really hot topic, and excited to get your insight on this. But before we get started, let's start with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Braven, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Braven, what mission matters to you?
My mission is very crystal clear. I'm very excited about it. It has a lot to do with my personal story, being a serial entrepreneur. But I want to build a business platform that's a category defining way that we eradicate burnout. I want to eradicate employee burnout. I want to be the one that does that.
Man, that's a big one. That's a big goal. That's a big goal. That's a big mission, and I'm in, man. Anything we could do, we're in on this one because I
I
feel
appreciate
like productivity, burnout, I mean, these things are real. And the further we get along, I know once upon a time in this world, maybe it was the kind of thought that, burnout's not real, just suck it up, just, keep going. And we're learning as time goes on that burnout's real and that it can have really long lasting health effects and cost businesses money. So we'll continue down this path, but I have to know. So, as an entrepreneur, like how'd you get started really on this path to solving employee burnout?
Yeah, great question, Adam. Really, it just started with my first business almost 16 years ago. Uh, Branding agency, global branding agency, did branding development, design, UX, UI, stuff like that. Built enterprise applications, and that company is called LA Visual. I started early on in my 20s, and right out of college, just was running and gunning, and thought, "Hey, let's work all night. Let's like took pride in like 24-hour, 36-hour shifts." I remember one time we were working on a big project for MySpace. Remember that company?
Oh man, MySpace. Oh, you took me back on that one.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and we incentivized I'm ashamed to say it, but it's part of my story. Is we incentivized our employees to stay up as long as they could, 3 days if needed, to come up with some really strong concepts for the rebrand on MySpace and the UX UI we were working on, and we were actually giving them a $5,000 bonus for the best idea, the best design, and I think a free trip to Jamaica or Hawaii or something. And we took pride in that. We thought, oh, we're really good, leaders. This is great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what I was doing. I was really setting the temperature for a really poisonous culture, a culture of burnout. It was horrible. And so I'm ashamed to say that I was a part of that. But the great thing is I've learned, that this is not only a really pervasive problem within the workplace, it's also something that I've learned is so critical to building healthy cultures, to leading people into well-being, right? Not just at work, but also at home.
Can you help us maybe define or understand? I don't want to assume that everybody understands this term burnout. I know it may seem simple, but we throw around buzz terms and buzzwords all the
Yeah.
time. Like, what does burnout mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. First and foremost, I'm not a clinician. I'm not a psychologist. We have a team of psychologists, the ThreeGood team, that builds our platform. But I will say this: is there has been differing definitions of burnout over the years.
Yeah.
But there's this really foundational study that was done back in the 80s by 3 psychologists, and that study kind of got buried for a while. But the definition is that you have stressors that are a result of work. And so burnout is the only mental health disorder on the spectrum that is directly tied to work and only exclusively attached to work, a result from a poor work environment. Before that study, and then that study was proven doing, over the years. Before that study, the definition was kind of varying, like different things in your life would impact it. And so the crazy part about that is, and I'm getting to the final thing, is that the World Health Organization finally adapted that definition. It was from the Maslow burnout inventory. They adapted
Mm.
that definition in 2019. So we have just kind of figured out that burnout is negative stress as a result of work.
And the thing is about burnout, and not saying that we wouldn't want to do this, and not saying as business owners, we're not thinking about the well-being of our employees' health and their lives, right? But the thing is like reducing employee burnout isn't something that you should do just because it's the right thing to do. I mean, burnout it costs employers money. It costs the economy
Oh,
productivity. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, it's a huge problem. I think
Yeah.
last we looked, it's a 140 to 190 billion dollar problem in the U.S. alone, and
Billions with a
yeah,
B. B
oh
is
yeah,
in boy.
oh yeah, yeah, almost 200 billion in two costs. It's expenditure and costing companies in absenteeism costs and health costs, health bill costs. So there's more employees that are admitting into the employee assistance programs. There's
Mm,
more employees taking advantage of the healthcare and the matching with the companies. It's just insane.
mhm,
It's a massive, massive problem. And not only that, the $190 billion doesn't account for the 40 to $50 million that is decreased productivity. But
mm.
that's not burnout. That's like a result of different mental issues at work. But it's crazy. It's staggering.
So, bunch of business owners, entrepreneurs, experts, executives that watch this show, and they're thinking to themselves right now, I get it. I'm a leader. I should be managing this. I know it's a thing. I know it's costing our company, but where do I start? Like what's the if somebody hasn't given this, they're a leader, they're out there watching this, and they haven't given this really much thought, even though it's kind of been one of those things in the back of their mind, or it's on the agenda, but they never quite get to it. Like, where does somebody start?
Yeah, that's such a hard question.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just start with this. Like, start looking at yourself, your own
Mm,
methodologies as a leader. I think that's really important. And one
yeah.
thing that I've learned is that listening is a huge part of that introspection, right? As a leader, and
Mm,
understanding, hey, we need to start to listen to our team members more often, more of the time,
mhm,
in a diverse setting, right? Um, and it's really critical to do that, to see, okay, how can I change the
mhm.
way I lead, the way I do things, in
Yeah.
order to improve the well-being of my team? Because it matters, right? When people are
Mm,
struggling, when they're leaning towards getting burnt out, we need to mitigate it before it gets there, right? So often we're reactive. We want to say, okay, we have an employee assistance program and it's got access to
yeah.
therapists, right, or access to coaching. Just do that. And we want to be hands off as supervisors. But
Mhm,
there's a really good book written by a partner of ours, Corinne Isabel Knoop. She's the executive
mhm,
director of Harvard Business School Research, and it's called mental health, compassionate management, and mental health in the modern workplace. I think she
mhm,
co-authored it with John Quelch from Miami University. Phenomenal book on understanding how supervisors need to step in and
mm.
actually do the work as well, with following up with their team, and also following up in a way that's vulnerable,
Yeah.
talking about their own struggles. And there's different layers to that, of course, and nuances, and we
Mhm,
won't get into that. But I think that's the most important thing: is we need to really understand, how are we leading and how do we need to change.
mhm.
And the first step is listening. Great question.
Yeah, it's tricky, and as you're talking,
Mhm.
I'm also thinking about, like, okay, so we're recording this in November, going into Thanksgiving week.
Mhm.
What is it, Monday?
Yeah,
Couple days till Thanksgiving, so our employees have some days off, right? They'll be taking
yeah,
off the Friday, the day after, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about like myself as a leader and just some of the ways you handle things or show things, and not always necessarily understanding that people are looking at you for leadership, but even in taking time off, So you just caught me in my own like error earlier today in our big company meeting, and we're just going around and people are talking about what they'll do, and I was talking about building landing pages. That probably wasn't the right thing to think about. Like talking about it's going to be nice and quiet so I can get some work done. I probably shouldn't have said that in retrospect. I should have
Mm,
said something different so that people don't feel necessarily, guilty for taking time off, things like that. Like there's other things
exactly.
that happen. So, as leaders, we have to be aware of that. Like, okay, we might, especially those of us that like to lead by example, that goes two different sides, not just for working and doing the things that, you would ask somebody to do as a servant leader and yourself, but also leading by example for taking some time
Mhm.
off.
Yeah, exactly. Rest is so important to
Man, you caught me on
protecting.
that one, Braven. I'm mad now.
No, don't be mad. That's the fact that you're acknowledging it. That's huge. Like you're being vulnerable right now for your team. Hopefully, some of them are logged in. That's
Yeah.
huge. It is important. It's like we can. I've said it so much, and I'm a
Hmm.
charismatic Type A personality, and so it took me years to figure out like if I walk in the room and start talking, I'm just going to
Yeah.
polarize all the answers. I'm going to polarize everybody's feelings. I'm going to
Hmm.
set that temperature right away. For most people, it's hot and uncomfortable,
Hmm.
especially like introverts and especially people that people of color. This tall white guy coming in and just
Yeah.
being it's not healthy. And so I think it's important for you to acknowledge that with your team. So kudos to you for doing that, and also too just understanding that you may be thinking it's innocent, like, hey, we got to build some landing pages or whatever.
Yeah.
But those people are taking it to heart, and now there's pressure on them that you don't have the pressure.
Hmm.
Now they
Hmm.
have this pressure, and yeah, sometimes that turns into guilt
Yep.
and overworking over a time where they should be resting and spending time with their families.
Yeah, no, well said. And so, well, I think we got one best practice out of me there by my error. What are some other kind of just best practices? And I know there's no magic one thing fits all, and every company is going to be different. Every dynamic, every team is different. But what are some other maybe best practices that you've seen as leaders out there are considering how to manage employee burnout and reduce it? Of course, is the goal.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so many different facets to it. I think something that's really important is to understand that there is such a low percentage. I
Mm.
think it's like under 1% of employees in general that actually apply and admit into the employee assistance programs that companies are offering, especially large enterprises. And so I think it's important to know that and know that there's a
Mhm.
low adoption rate, especially with employee surveys, there's a low adoption rate as well.
Mhm.
And so it's really important to say, okay, we already know that.
Yeah.
I've seen in my experience so many executive teams focusing their energy on trying to increase those numbers, right? The
Mhm.
admission numbers of the employee assistance program or the employee surveys, and reduce the amount that are ignoring them or procrastinating on them. And I
Mhm.
think it's really important to say, okay, well, that's going to be there. It's always going to be there because we're asking the same questions. What if there's a way to enter into dialogue and asking questions instead of the company centric questions,
Yeah.
person centric questions, right?
Mm.
And I think that's one thing that we can do. Also, checking in on a regular basis. One-on-one meetings are huge. That's a best practice that I can't get past. Needs to
Yeah.
happen. If you're not having weekly one-on-ones with every one of your direct reports, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. And then finally, I think I've worked with a lot of very large corporations over the years and small ones as well, whether they're 300 employees or 10,000, 20,000 employees. The
Mhm.
executives sometimes don't realize that their behavior, the way that they lead their leadership team, trickles all the way down to the frontline employees. And so it's so important to be practice what you preach, right? And try to do that
Mm.
at all levels, and then admit when you don't. Be the first to apologize publicly.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and I think it's one of those things that I mean, I won't say we know intuitively. I feel like we many times as leaders get busy in our businesses, revenue, sales, like all the other things, and then sometimes we forget. Or I'll speak for myself. I forget all the things that go into it, and just understanding that, we're not all robots out here. We're not all AI. Like, we have feelings, we have emotions. People put in a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of heart into what they're doing. And if your team didn't, then you probably wouldn't have hired them, or you wouldn't have that great culture that you have at your companies, right? So like managing the other side of things and the well-being side, I mean, can't say how enough about how important it is.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that it's very important with the culture to, we did this in internal branding exercises
Yeah.
at my former agency. It's you have this idea of values, right, are
Mhm.
often aspirational. They're actually not real values. So, you know, a company will put out these values right on the board, and the town hall announce new mission, vision, values, right? Oftentimes, when we talked about it, the executives aren't actually exhibiting those values, which is very negative.
Mm.
Um, and then, secondly, those values they're aspirational. They're not real values. So they're values that we aspire to, but our workforce actually, or our executive team or our leadership team,
Mhm.
aren't actually exhibiting those values. And so that's why it's so important to define what are the aspirational values. And it's okay to have aspirational values, but what are the
Sure.
real values that we hold to, right? That we hold true, and we actually organically, authentically already exhibit these
Mm.
in the workforce within our company. And then bringing those to the top and rewarding, creating symbols to reward
Mhm.
people for living out those values behaviorally is so critical. And there needs to be that. The last thing I'll say on this is there needs to be a very strong focus on purpose outside of
Yeah.
revenue growth. There has to be. There has to be, and everything has to wrap around that purpose, because there's actually studies that show employees that take time off to volunteer, employees that actually, I think Berkeley did a study years ago where
Mhm.
if you just give a tiny amount of, it doesn't have to be a lot of money, it can be $1 a month to
Yeah.
a cause that you're passionate about, that actually reduces early signs of burnout.
Mm. It's great. So, Braven, I want to switch gears a bit. So, I want to
Yeah.
go further into your company. So, you told us a little, but I want to go further. So, tell us more about ThreeGood.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, ThreeGood, we're a SaaS company, B2B SaaS company. We're focused entirely on reducing employee burnout
Mm.
and making connections to actually ultimately reducing attrition, right? And so we're a technology company. We're based in Los Angeles. We're pre-seed. We're early
Mm.
stage. We're still in beta, but we have over 5,000 employees on the platform right now, and we're growing. And people are very excited about adopting ThreeGood because we're
Yeah.
able to not only quantify burnout, where I will
Mhm.
track it and then report predictive analytics and metrics on which part of your team is at risk of burnout, what percentage, right, on a regular
Yeah.
basis. So we're able to produce monthly reports that's very valuable for leadership teams
Mm.
globally to be able to say, oh, wow, we need to change some dials here and turn up this area and turn down this area. It's really really cool. So I mean, we're a technology company that's
Mhm.
trying to attack burnout, and like that's what I mentioned. Our mission, my big mission, is big, hairy, audacious goal. Right? I want to
Yeah.
eradicate burnout from the workplace globally, and I think we can do it. So right now we're a Slack. Health and wellness app and MS
Mhm.
Teams app, and so we're integrating that way. We find that employees are most engaged in those platforms, and yeah, it's really really exciting. It's a huge problem, and someone's got to step up and do it. So I think we're
What I
ready for the job.
And what I love about ThreeGood is that, I mean, when we think about other things in our business, right? Any other type of metrics, the sales, revenue, any of the other things that we have, why shouldn't there be a metric for our employee engagement in terms of burnout, or not, or like, or their well-being overall? Like, why shouldn't there be? So when I heard about this, I'm like, duh, this makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people didn't realize, there's some interesting things to use AI, right,
Mm.
combined with psychology, which is what our algorithms do, and to actually quantify burnout and track it. And it's helpful to have the unified definition as of 2019 as well from the
Mm.
clinicians and the experts. Maybe before then we couldn't have done it.
Mhm. What are the types of companies that you find get the most value out of working with you and your team in the platform? So is there a certain size? Is this for enterprise, middle market? I mean, give us a little bit of a feel for the complexion of
Yeah,
who typically works with you.
yeah. Any company can use it, but it's definitely more middle market for
Hmm.
sure. Anywhere from 50 employees up to 1,200 employees is kind of like that's like the bucket, the sandbox that we're
Hmm.
playing in. We find that a majority of the companies under 800 employees are using Slack, and then any companies that are going towards the 1,200 marker in terms of employee base are using MS Teams. Both great platforms, but both open all the time for all the employees. Like,
Yeah.
we see that there's a huge engagement increase week over week just because we're on the platforms that the employees use for their primary
Yeah.
mode of communication throughout the day, 7 days a week.
Can you take me through the user experience? I guess first, well, two parts to this question. So let's first start with the user experience in terms of a new company being onboarded. Let's start with that side of the discussion, and then maybe we move on into like the employee side and how they actually use it.
Yeah, great question. So the onboarding experience is pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
It's simple. You 4 to 5 steps. You go to threegood.com,
Yeah.
download the app. You get a free trial, 30-day free trial right off the bat. We don't ask for any upfront payment or upfront credit card information,
Hmm.
and you can start using it within your team right away. And the great thing about the onboarding process, we give kind of a message that automatically will send out to the workforce that says, "Hey, we're using ThreeGood for the well-being of our team. We all want you to be happy, healthy, rested, all those things, and
Yeah.
you should be hearing from the ThreeGood platform." Once that's actually onboarded into the workspace, whether it's Slack or MS Teams, uh, our psychology curated questions, right, from a resident
Mm.
psychologist, Dr. John Wong, from the VA San Diego, PhD in cognitive behavioral therapy. He's helped us formulate and curate an entire database of
Hmm.
questions, all targeted towards burnout and burnout reduction. So employees start to get these questions presented to them. Ultimately, we'll have videos of
Yeah.
some of our team members presenting these questions and kind of being vulnerable themselves. Like, "Hey, how
Mm.
was your week? I was really tough. I was up late with the kids, changing diapers, whatever it is, my newborn, and it's just been stressful because I have this
Yeah.
deadline, and so I'm checking in at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and I know it's not good for me.
Yeah.
What's your week been like? Here, check this next question out from
Yeah.
ThreeGood, so you answer it." And so we try to present the questions in a positive
Hmm.
light by being vulnerable at the same time. We see that creates better engagement. But
Yeah.
those questions go out on a regular basis, and then our companies can decide how frequent they are. By
Hmm.
default, they go out 3 times a week, but you can turn up the dial or turn it down depending on
Yeah.
your culture and what your leadership team wants. And then those questions ask a bunch of really important things to start to get data on
Mm.
how well the team is doing. And everything is anonymous in terms of privacy. So employees can choose
Yeah.
to share any detailed results they want with their leadership team. But for now,
Wow.
it's completely anonymous, and they're able to do very quick thumbs up, thumbs down on the questions. They don't have to write details. Literally takes a half a second to answer a
Yeah.
question for the day. And then what we do is over time, as each employee is engaging, we give the employees activity cards. Those activity cards are also written by our psychologists, and they basically say,
Hmm.
"Hey, here's 5 steps to reducing the insomnia that we think that you may be dealing
Hmm.
with right now," or "Here's 5 steps to reduce this issue that you may have with anxiety and panic attacks."
Yeah.
You're just 5 practical takeaways, steps that you can do. They're not obvious. They're like
Yeah.
professionals, right? These are clinicians suggesting this. I mean, we all know the obvious ones. Get up, do an eye exercise, don't stare at the screen for too long, take a break every hour or so, right? Do a
Yeah.
jumping jack or two, go take a walk, go outside, create boundaries with your employees and your supervisor.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. We've known that for years.
Yeah.
But what we don't know is the things that therapists can tell us, right? And so they get that direct
Hmm.
access to this professional setting without
Hmm.
having to say, "I'm a person that needs therapy," right? Because there's a lot of stigma tied to that. Or I have to
Yeah.
go register for my EAP program and
Hmm.
talk to a psychologist because I got addiction issues or whatever, right? It can just
Hmm.
be privately going back and forth with a ThreeGood bot. So really cool. And eventually we're going to have activity cards for supervisors, how to follow up
Mm.
with a department that's at risk for burnout. Here's best practices.
And it seems like the value of that data is just gold over time. Like just because the longer, I mean, especially for a good sized workforce, like for the leadership and even for the employee, just kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
looking at their own results or tracking their own data over time, like you see patterns, like you don't really
Yeah.
know. Like, well, because you're doing your job day to day, or like you said, if you're juggling all those things, the baby, the this, the that, right, then you may not even know that you've been
Yeah.
up or that you've been having a problem sleeping. Like, it's not always apparent.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's not. It's not. Sometimes you need someone else to tell you. You know, it's really critical to get ahead of those things. And sometimes you just need to have some kind of practical
Yeah.
takeaway to say, okay, I didn't even realize I was dealing with this
Mhm.
issue, you know? So
What's some of the feedback you've received, either from the employers, the employees? Like, tell me a little bit more of the feedback because you have quite a few people on the platform already, as you mentioned.
yeah, the feedback's been great. We've gotten a lot of negative feedback, which has been awesome to iterating.
Yeah.
We're really big on iterating. We're still in beta. And so it's really
Mhm.
important for us to listen to our customers. As an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, that's probably one of the most important things is understanding your customers' needs
Yeah.
and pain points, right? It's so easy for us just to build a product that we think in our mind is valuable, right? Or could apply to
Mhm.
our own personal challenges and problems. But oftentimes, that's not the case, right? Eric Ries or Reyes wrote a book called The Lean Startup. It's great on this about how
Mhm.
you can waste a ton of time building a product you think the world needs and they don't need it at all. It's not
Yeah.
actually a product market fit. It's not defining a solution. It's not offering a solution to a
Mhm.
tangible problem, right? So the feedback we've gotten a lot of negative feedback, which has been great, and that's been like, hey, how do we make this better for them, you know? And so I have no problem sharing that because that's what we're about. We want to make a product that is on point at every level
Mhm.
to start to really eradicate the issue of burnout, or at least decrease it over time within the
Yeah.
workplace. And so, yeah, the reason we added the videos is because there was less engagement without the videos presenting the questions. And so that's
Mm.
one great example of, hey, we turned this into a positive, right? We answered what the customers were asking. So.
Mhm. Tell me a little bit more about the internal culture over at ThreeGood and how you keep that intact. Because I feel like it's almost like, okay, so the eradicate employee burnout company is eradicating it. Like, how do they keep everybody healthy within?
Yeah, it's easy to look like a hypocrite, right, to my team.
I didn't use that word. Hold
No,
on.
but it's true. It's true. Like
I don't want to hear the cobbler
we're
doesn't
like,
have any
hey,
shoes.
yeah, we're going to reduce and eradicate burnout. Well, we better make sure that we're able to do that for our team, right?
Yeah.
It's true. Like that's like walking into this, we realize if we're going to put that up on the board,
Yeah.
we got to be serious about this. And I'll be the
Mhm.
first to say I'm not always doing it well. I'm not always practicing what I preach, right?
Yeah.
But our team's small. I think
Mhm.
that's so we're all bought in. Everybody's bought in terms of they believe in the vision, and we're remote as well since COVID, and so
Mhm.
that's been for me the most challenging is how do we keep people um, creating boundaries and checking in at good times, not all hours of the night, not
Mhm.
7 days a week. Make sure they have a good balance and rhythm of rest
Mhm.
and relaxation. And so I always say the 3 hours are so important because you can rest, but real rest comes when you're resting enough to actually be able to reflect,
Yeah.
right, on the good decisions, the bad decisions of the week, of the month, and then to react, right, to make a change.
Mhm.
It's not good enough just to take a couple of days off. We have to take enough time off, or we can take days off to go hang out with a bunch of friends, right? Go to a
Yeah.
vacation house or something, and you're resting. That the first layer of rest is happening, but are you really reflecting? Are you writing
Mm.
down what's going on? How are you changing? So I think that's something that's really critical. But yeah. So I digress. What was the question? I
Culture,
completely
internal
forgot. Oh yeah,
culture. I
yeah.
think you answered it though.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's a small team, it's a little bit easier, but yeah, I think the biggest thing that we do is we make sure, hey, are we using the app? Are we actually checking in with the ThreeGood app?
Yeah.
That's one thing, obviously, right? Like we built
Mhm.
the tool that we think intuitively we can deal with this. Let's make sure we're using it. And then we do one-on-ones, like we do, our Mel Jensen, our CPO, he's a big servant leader. He's a phenomenal leader, and
Mhm.
he's always big on, hey, let's be checking in every time. Doesn't require video, but he's always on video, which is cool. It kind
Mhm.
of creates that comfort of like, hey, let's be face to face. And
Yeah.
so one-on-ones every week with the team is so important. I think that's been huge. Is
Mm.
never canceling the one-on-ones as much as you can. Right? Sometimes things come up.
Yeah.
And then pushing to make sure you're getting that face time because you can do email updates and it's easy to kind of be,
Mhm.
oh yeah, we got Slack, we have email, we have text. It's very easy for us to keep those written updates there, which are important.
Yeah.
But that FaceTime's been big for us, and those weeklies have been huge. So to push some things forward and staying positive.
All right. So, People Good Podcasts. Everybody that's been watching this show for a long time, I love supporting other podcasters and getting the message out. We'll definitely have the link to the podcast, all that good stuff below. But tell us a little bit more about your podcast. Again, People Good Podcast, because I want my audience to go check it out.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Adam. It's people good is really just, it comes out of the idea of how can we put people and purpose before profits, right?
Yeah.
That's really the focus. And how do we talk about the future of better leadership and the future of
Mhm.
workforce and healthier, happier teams? And so what I do is I ask the guests that are on People Good are basically within my network. They're usually only executives
Mhm.
or subject matter experts. And so mostly people that have been there, done that. They failed hard. They've succeeded well.
Yeah.
They've managed $1 billion of assets. They've managed teams of thousands. They've managed multinational companies, or they're subject matter experts in their field, like a psychologist or a clinician or a doctor. And so we've had some great guests.
Yeah.
The former CMO of Calm was on, Omar Dawood.
Mm.
Our psychologist, Dr. John Wong, as I mentioned, Corinne Isabel Knoop was on there, the former CFO of Dole. So some really cool guests and people that you need to hear from. Like
Yeah.
if you're a serial entrepreneur, these are people that can really just, a conversation can teach you a lot. I'm always
Mm.
writing notes. I'm always like learning. So it's a
Yeah.
cool podcast. Check it out. People good. And we don't do we're not as disciplined and focused as you. I mean, it's not our primary bread and butter, right? So
Yeah.
it's once a month we'll have a new episode. Maybe we'll get there to twice a month. But yeah, there's 2 seasons right now. Check it out. People good.
No, that's awesome. Once a month is huge. And I tell people all the time, consistency is the main thing. So it's better to have a well thought out episode and have a conversation that you want to have and to do it at your own pace
Yeah.
and just to remain consistent. So for all the podcasters or would be podcasters out there, once a month is plenty. So start your podcast if you're thinking about it. All right, I'll get
Good.
off my soapbox on that one.
I like it. I
But
like it.
just had to
But
let you know.
you're doing a great job of it. I mean, it's amazing the system that you have, and it's just really valuable. I appreciate what you're doing. We can learn a lot from all your guests. It's great.
Oh, well, very kind, and thank you.
Of course.
My team works hard over here, except they better be taking off some time for Thanksgiving if they're watching this. So there you go. There, I tried to get my steam back on that one.
Starting Wednesday, right?
Yep,
Right.
exactly.
One extra day to cook.
So Braven, seriously, this has been great. I learned a lot about what you're doing to really eradicate the idea of employee burnout and what business owners and executives out there could be doing to help, whether it's using ThreeGood, whether it's holding those one-on-ones, all those different tips you gave. I certainly got a lot of value out of that. So I just have to ask, so what's next? What's next for you? What's next for ThreeGood?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of cool stuff. So we're working on giving our employee base access to therapists through some partners that we're working
Mm.
with. Can't disclose the partners at this point, but that's coming
Yeah.
early next year. That way, if they need help, they can just connect privately in their own channel. We're also doing some cool stuff with biometrics. Can't wait to tell you guys about that. We just created a great partnership with a company that's run by a neurologist, and it's just awesome. It's exciting. So
Mm.
we're bringing some cool bells and whistles and tricks and technology, not just using AI, but using actual technology and software to get in there and make sure that our people are doing well, and we're reducing that burnout.
Fantastic. So if somebody's watching this and they want to learn more, what's the best way for them to do that?
ThreeGood.com, the word three, not the number, and check that out. We're also on Instagram at ThreeGooder. Yeah, check out the People Good podcast. I write for Forbes periodically, so check my articles out. You can see them on my LinkedIn. Not too active on the other platforms, but check me out on LinkedIn for sure. Follow me or connect. I'm always open to chat, whether it's mentorship for new founders and just coaching. I love doing that. Mostly telling about my failures, right, and my successes, and how you can try to do both, because it's so important to have both under your belt. And also just connecting with anybody who wants to be on the show that has some valuable things to talk about. I'd love to learn. That's why I do the show, selfishly, so I can learn as well and grow.
Wonderful. Well, Braven, again, appreciate you coming on the show. And to the audience, as always, if this is your first time checking in with us at Mission Matters, our goal is really to bring on business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and experts that have a story to tell. They have a mission behind what they're doing, what wakes them up in the morning, what they're passionate about. This is the type of stories we like to tell. And so if you're somebody that's interested in that, of course, hit the subscribe button. We want you to be a return visitor or viewer, depending on where you're at. And Braven, really, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely, Adam. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.